Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. My name is Pam Merkel and I'm Coordinator of Information Technology here at the Advocacy Center. I'd like to welcome our presenters and have them introduce themselves, and then I'm going to do some technical housekeeping. So April and Kathy, welcome. Could you please introduce yourselves for the audience today?
Hi, good afternoon everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is April Dixon. I'm a Parent Education Specialist here at the Advocacy Center.
Hi, and I'm Kathy McCarthy-Prue. I am an advocate and a trainer, and I also support our Parent Training Information Grant people who run it across the state.
Great. Thank you, ladies. Okay. As I promised, I want to talk a little bit about some technical housekeeping notes. During today's webinar, we would like you to use your questions pane to ask questions of the presenters, and I'm going to show you some screenshots on how to use that questions pane. There will also be some polling questions, and it'll be pretty obvious how you respond to those. Following the webinar, you will get a follow-up email from GoToWebinar, and in that email will be a link to a SurveyMonkey, and we would ask that you spend just a couple minutes to give us some feedback on your webinar experience. Okay, as I promised, here are some screenshots to describe, for those of you who are new to GoToWebinar, how to use that questions pane. In this screenshot, you will see the GoToWebinar control panel in its collapsed form. As I'm highlighting here, there's a red arrow. You use the red arrow to expand your control panel. This is a shot that shows the expanded control panel. In that control panel, you should see a questions pane, which is here in this circle. Notice that there are two boxes. You would type your message in the small box where it says type message here. Once you do that, this send button will become active and you can click to send the message. If you're asking a technical question, if you're having some difficulty with the webinar, I will try to respond to that in the chat pane and your answer will come back in the larger box. If it's a question for one of our presenters that's based on the topic for today, if it's something that I think needs to be addressed right away, I will interrupt them and have them address your question as they're going along. If it's something that I know will be covered, I will let them cover it as they get to it, and if it's something that would be better addressed at the end, I will be posing those questions at the end. So go ahead and submit your questions and we'll take them either in line or at the end of the formal presentation. One more thing I wanted to point out with regard to your GoToWebinar control panel is the audio portion. On occasion, people will have trouble with the audio functionality that's built into their computer. Most people are probably joining using the built-in speakers on either your laptop or speakers on your desktop, and your setting would be here, this radio button that says microphone and speakers. If you have trouble with the audio and you need to switch to telephone audio, you click this radio button, so you have to expand the audio portion of your control panel. Click the telephone radio button and you will then see the phone number and PIN number that you need to join the audio portion of the webinar via telephone. That is a toll number, but hopefully people have unlimited long distance, so that would not be a barrier to joining via telephone. Okay. At this time, I am going to turn the controls over to Kathy and April and have them start the topic for today, which is RTI, IEP, and 504. So Kathy, you can take control.
All right, I just hit show my screen, and I'm waiting for it to come up.
Oh,
we
can see it. We just want you to bring up your PowerPoint at this point in time.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Just
oh boy.
Get in. You're good. That's all right. Just go to slideshow.
There we go.
There we
Good to go.
Okay.
All right. Wonderful. Well, welcome again, everyone. And today we're going to talk a little bit about response to intervention, individualized education programs, 504 plans, and what we're going to do is just give you a brief overview of the three. So, with that being said, let's see who's joining us today.
Okay, we're going to launch a couple poll questions to get a sense of who's in the audience. So if you could please respond to these as you see them on your screen, that would be great. So for those of you who are responding to these polling questions, are you an individual with a disability, a parent, family member or guardian of a person with a disability, a school professional, an advocate, or a student. And we are asking you to make a forced choice here. So if you are more than one of those things, please let us know how you would like to be identified today. And I'm going to leave the poll open for a little bit longer. Votes are still coming in. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to just give it a little bit longer, and then I'm going to, okay, it looks as though everyone who plans to vote is going to do that. So let me close the poll and share those results. Okay, so we have nearly half of our audience are parents, family members, or guardians, 45%, 9% school professionals, and 45% advocates. And I had a chat back that there was a Medicaid service coordinator in the audience, so we have a range of different constituents represented. So let me hide those. And then I believe, Kathy, we have another polling question. Is that the next? Okay, so let me launch that. And we're just trying to figure out what your experience is with these topics. So do you, and in this case, you can respond with multiple answers. So do you know someone who either has used response to intervention, a 504 plan, or has an IEP? And if you have experience with more than one of those, feel free to indicate that. Oh, we definitely have people with experience with more than that because we have more than 100% votes coming in. So I'm going to give that. Okay, everyone has voted, so let me close that and share those results. So 100% of our audience has experience with IEPs, and then a third, 33%, with 504 plans, and just a quarter of the audience with response to intervention. So I'm going to hide those results. And then Kathy, or I believe it's April who's going to start in.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I am back again. So let's begin by unpacking RTI, or better yet said, response to intervention. The purpose of RTI is to catch struggling children early. The purpose is also to provide appropriate instruction. Response to intervention identifies students at risk for poor learning outcomes. It monitors student progress. It provides evidence-based interventions, and it also adjusts the intensity and nature of those interventions depending on a student's unique needs and how they respond to the said interventions. RTI is the school district's process to determine if a student responds to scientific, research-based instruction. All right, next slide, please. It's important to note that this is a general education service. It's not a special education service at all. And so when we talk about why would we even look at response to intervention, federal law requires that before any student is placed in special ed, the school must ensure that his or her learning problem is not linked to inadequate instruction. So RTI was put in place to address the high number of students who were being classified for special education without first assessing if there was an issue of lack of adequate instruction. All students are screened annually to identify those students who are not making academic progress at the expected rates. The screening instruments that they use, they should be valid and reliable and aligned with grade level curriculum, which is also based on the New York State learning standards. Students that have low test scores in this process should be monitored periodically through screening and ongoing assessments of the students' reading and mathematical abilities and skills. And so these particular screenings, they should be brief, they should be efficient, and they should also be repeatable testing of age-appropriate academic skills. And again, it identifies students at risk for academic failure, and it's also looking for students who score very low on these tests. So let's take a closer look at what RTI looks like, and this is the model. First and foremost, RTI, or response to intervention, has 3 levels or tiers, as they refer to them, of intervention. The first tier, what is done is that differentiated instruction should be and can be provided for all students. Now, in the event that after 8 to 10 weeks, progress is not shown, the next tier level should be implemented, and that would be Tier 2. And what this does is it's targeted interventions for students at risk of failure. So in the first one, there might be some areas where they, scored a little bit low, but now we're looking at specifics, and how they address it is that, now in the last slide we talked about the assessments and how that's done and how they monitor. These interventions in Tier 2 or Level 2 should be provided in small group settings. Now again, after about 8 to 10 weeks, if progress is not made in the general education curriculum, then we begin to take a look at more strategic or more intense intervention for students whose needs are a bit more challenging. And what this can look like is that as few as 1 to 2 children might work with the specialist to be able to intervene, and hopefully they begin to experience some success in learning. Now, all of these interventions can address both academics, but they can also address behavioral challenges that students might be experiencing. Next slide, please. So here's something very interesting. When a student is receiving the first level or Tier 1 services, families do not need to be notified. But once the school determines that it's necessary to increase the services to Tier 2 and even up to Tier 3, parents must be notified. Some of the potential benefits of response to intervention are that, first and foremost, it eliminates the wait to fail approach. RTI can also help to nip a particular difficulty in the bud. It can reduce the number of children who are inappropriately referred to special education. But student progress monitoring techniques of RTI, they provide some really good information, instructionally relevant information that shows how a particular student learns, and again, what we can do to ensure that students experience success, and most of all, that they learn. An important safeguard is this. IDEA, which you will hear about more in the very next slide, it allows parents to request a formal evaluation to determine eligibility for special education at any point during the RTI process. Now, however, and as you'll find out as we talk a little bit more about the IEP meeting or a 504 plan meeting, it doesn't necessarily mean that a student will be found eligible. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So why don't we welcome Kathy to the conversation.
Okay, thank you, April, for explaining RTI and introducing the topic of IEPs in a 504 plan. They are the two main education laws that support children with disabilities. I'm going to start by letting you know that there is a connection between the two pictures of, or the two fish bowls that you've seen up above, and I will explain what that is as we go on. And I'm also going to start by quoting Pete Wright of Wright's Law, of which I hope you are all familiar with. And if you are not, you can search on the computer, of course not right now, at Wright's Law, which is W, so W as in wagon, RIGHTS, law, LAW.com. So WRIGHTS, LAW.com. Pete is a wonderful special education resource. He said, to understand the battles being fought today for children with disabilities, it is important to understand the history and traditions associated with public schools and special education. So I'm going to tell you, even though it's hard to hear, we need to know that until 1975, children with disabilities were often excluded for school. Hence my picture of, actually, the fish isn't even in the fishbowl. They weren't in school. And when they were allowed to attend, they were often lumped together in generic special education classes. They were kept away from, quote, normal children. Classes were held in undesirable, out-of-the-way places like trailers in the infamous school basement. Now, believe it or not, states actually allowed school districts to exclude children with disabilities if they believed that the child would not benefit from an education, or they believed the child's presence would be disruptive to others. And then I found, actually on Wright's Law, two other unbelievable facts. In 1958, the Illinois Supreme Court held that compulsory education did not apply to children with mental impairments. And until 1969, it was a crime in North Carolina for a parent to enroll a child with a disability in public school after the child had been excluded. A few families brought lawsuits to try to combat this prejudice, but it was not until, and now this is the second fishbowl, Public Law 94-142 that was enacted in 1975. That law did provide for children with disabilities to have a right to an education. So let's now talk about IDEA. So IDEA, as you see here, and I love the word that it's IDEA, but they say IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act, is the federal law. It's the law that mandates and provides support and services to students that are found eligible. That's eligible under specific disability categories. This federal law is what I call the law of the land. Plain and simple, the law on the land. So in the first box, the box closest to the left, that's the federal law. Each state has to figure out how they're going to implement the federal law. A state can provide more than federal law says they have to, but they can never do less. So let's now go to the box in the middle, and that's New York State Education Department. There are two parts to the education law in New York State. The first part is called the Part 100. The Part 100 provides guidance and regulation for the whole student body, which includes gen ed kids and special ed kids. It could be on sports, phys ed, lunch. It's regulations surrounding all sorts of everyday stuff that's part of the school day. The next part is called the Part 200, which is for special education students. Plain and simple. These are the New York State laws that implements the federal law. So they are just, they're attached at the hip. Lastly, so that's the box on the right, and at the bottom, there is school policy. So we have a little picture of a school there. And it's in that order, federal, state, school. I teach parents that school policy can mean that's the way the district has always done business. Just because something is a school policy does not mean that it is law or regulation. School policy cannot override the Part 200s or IDEA. If the district official says something is school policy, politely ask for them to give you a copy of what they are quoting as school policy. If it cannot be produced in writing, or even if it can be produced in writing, and it conflicts with state or federal law, then write a letter that shows how their policy conflicts with the regulations, and ask to meet with them to work it out. I will tell you, for the most part of your dealings, and you already know this, it will be with your district, not with the New York State law or the federal law. There will be a team of which you are a member that evaluates, decides whether or not your child is eligible, and then implements the IEP. So, since we're talking about IEP, we're all the way there. What is the CSE? Well, I'm going to use fancy words, legal words, to describe what the CSE is. The CSE in regulation says it's a multidisciplinary team established in accordance with the education law. It determines if the student is eligible for special education services. If the committee finds that a student is determined not eligible, then maybe that student could be appropriate for a 504 plan. But their duties in general is arranging for evaluations and re-evals, They then review and discuss information from those evaluations and observations to identify the student's needs. They determine eligibility and educational classification. They recommend programs and services, and they're responsible for reviewing students' programs and services. Pam?
Yes. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
At this time, we'd like you to, for those of you, many of you in the audience, I think everyone in the audience has had some experience with the Committee on Special Education because you said you were familiar with IEP. So using your questions pane, let us know who some of the members of the Committee on Special Education are. And then I will be calling those back out as I see answers coming in. And then Kathy will review whether we've gotten them all or whether there are some that we've missed. So go ahead and share your knowledge with us as to the members of the Committee on Special Education that you are aware of. All right, let me see what I've got. CSE chairperson. Okay, come on, don't be shy. Those of you, you must have other ideas about who is a member of the committee on. Okay, I've got some more things. Parents, teachers, principal, parent, advocate, CSE chairperson, general education teacher. Good for you, Brett. And good for everybody. Thank you all for responding. But that general education teacher is one that that people aren't always aware is a member of the Committee on Special Education. Okay, therapists, classroom teachers, speech pathologist, occupational therapist. Let's see. Oh, another very interesting response. Local education, LEA representative. Local education, what does the A stand for? I don't remember.
Agency.
Local education agency. Okay. So I do now. That's sort of bringing back some memories from the CPSE experience I had, where there was often a member of the LEA, not always at the CSE, but often at the CPSE. So, okay. Caitlin says APE teachers. I'm not sure what that means. All in capital letters. I'm not familiar with that acronym. So, Kathy, maybe you know.
AP. It's not coming to me immediately. Can Caitlin say what that is?
Okay, Caitlin, if you have more information about what that acronym means, could you type that in? And then school psychologist, I think that was mentioned before. So, adapted physical education. Thank you, Caitlin.
Oh,
okay.
Very nice.
Yes,
very
great.
Nice.
Okay, we have a lot of knowledge in our audience. So I'm going to go on mute again, and Kathy, you can continue.
We sure do. Thank you very much, and thank you for, I've got the 60-year-old brain going where I don't always immediately come up with it. Okay, the members, and you are a smart group, are parents, school psychologists, a general ed teacher, student. Oh, I don't think anybody said that, especially when we get to older age kids. District representative, school physician, although I, of course, must remind you that school physician needs 3 business days, or the district needs 3 business days notice if you want the school physician there. Individual to interpret evaluations, others, and I'll describe who those are, and special education teacher. So others. Others can be additional staff from the school, although the school must tell you by putting it in writing in the notice, and we're going to review the notice that they send out to you of who is coming. Any provider evaluator that you have employed to do an evaluation, it actually could be a grandparent, another child care provider, a Sunday school teacher. Any of these, it could be any of these people who have an expertise on the student. When they come to the committee, they are then part of the CSE team. Isn't that cool? So they are part of the team, and they help to make a decision. You, the parent, are not required by law to inform the school who you are bringing, although the school district is required to tell you, but it is considered the right thing to do. We at the Advocacy Center let parents know that we believe it is the right thing to do. It is polite, and it is one way parents can practice being a team member. In fact, for me, I make it clear that I will not attend a CSE meeting if the district does not know that I am coming.
And
April?
that is awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to add that, so after, one of the things is this, is that these meetings should be scheduled when it is convenient for families. But in the event after several tries, if families or the guardian's schedule does not allow their attendance in person, always remember that they can participate via the phone. Thank you, Kath.
All right, who can make a referral to the CSE? Well, certainly parents, and frequently it does come from parents, teachers, principal, or other school professionals. And at the Advocacy Center, what we tell parents is if they are putting in the referral to the Committee on Special Education, their request must, capital letters underline, be in writing and addressed to the CSE chairperson. Must. This system works on the written word. And once you do that, a time clock starts, so to speak. The initial referral letter includes a request for an evaluation and a request for a CSE review upon completion of the evaluation. If time is of the essence, and frequently it is, the year goes by fast, we suggest that you go into the school and deliver the letter and then ask to sign the parental consent to evaluate form. If time's not an issue, you can send it in the mail and wait then for them to send that back to you. But in the end, once they get the letter, they then have 10 days to get your signed parental consent form. You have started the process and you are on the clock, so to speak. Okay. 60 days. I have 2 slides to describe this because the 60-day thing can be very confusing. Okay, in regulation there is referred to 60 calendar days and 60 school days. Here is what must be accomplished. No, don't worry, because like I said, there's going to be another slide too. In 60 calendar days. So 60 calendar days would be a little less than 2 months. Think about it in that way. After the district receives the parental consent, remember that's why you might want to take it in because there's 10 days before that, they must have completed evaluating the student in the 60 days and conducting the CSE meeting to determine if the student is eligible. By 60 school days, and 60 school days does not count weekends or days off or school breaks, the district must have also completed the recommendations for the development of the IEP if they've decided the student is eligible and started implementing the IEP. I would tell you that most of the time districts do, right after the meeting, if the services are available, it starts right away. But sometimes it may take, especially in a rural district, it may take a while to get a specific service available. So they have 60 school days. That is 3 months or more. On the next slide, we're going to go over this again, as I said, and we're going to look at timeline and process. But before I move on, I would be remiss if I did not say do not confuse school breaks with the summer break. The CSE is open for business in the summer, even though there is a break there. They are open for business in the summer. Okay. Referral, and we already know that a parent, teacher, or other school professional makes the referral to the CSE, and then the parental consent has to occur, and that is 10 days. And the reason it says yes is sometimes the referral comes from the school, so if the parent says yes, and they have to say yes to this even if they sent the letter in, an evaluation is done and they go to the meeting, and that's eligibility. So see this arrow? That refers to the 60 days. So in that time frame, because that's after the 10 days for parental consent, in that time frame the evaluation needs to be completed and they have had to have gone to a CSE meeting. The next part is they go to recommendation, so then they make the recommendation and then they need to implement that whole thing. Evaluation, eligibility, recommendation, and implementation is 60 school days. We then move on again, we keep going through the year to review and reevaluation, and then an annual review, which then must occur in 1 year. Evaluations are going to come from multiple sources, certainly from parental input. They do the psychological evaluation, which looks at how the student learns and what they know. They take a social history, and the social history comes from the parent. They do a physical exam is done from generally the parent or the parent's physician. They do classroom observation, which looks at the student's learning environment, because what they do in a psychological evaluation, often a small room with a nice school psychologist, doesn't necessarily mean what it looks like in the classroom. So that's an important piece of it. And then other appropriate evaluations, like there may be a need for a speech and language eval, a physical therapy, an occupational therapy, a musical therapy evaluation, and there are others. So they take those evaluations, and when they do their evaluation, it reveals what the student's strengths, their challenges, and it absolutely tells us how they learn. Taking all of that together, we then can identify supports, services, modifications that are required and needed for the student to be involved and progress in the general ed curriculum. All right, let's look at these words. There's a lot of words on here. Big data, I love that. Evaluation is really putting, in a way, the student under the microscope or the magnifying glass to look at why and the what and the how. It's going to include present level of educational performance. And the best way I can describe that is, that's a medical term, that's the student's baseline. Where are they at now? Which means what is, where are they functioning in regards to math, social studies, science, behavior. So therefore the evaluations do assess their strengths, but it also assesses their need area. It absolutely addresses their learning style. Is it visual, auditory, hands-on, and the instructional needs that they have. So when you run out of options offered in general education and little progress is being gained in RTI, you turn to specialized instruction. Why? Because teachers can differentiate in the content, the process, the product. They can do it according to the student's readiness for the material, their interest, which is big, and their learning profile, so their style, to increase growth, motivation, and efficiency. I'm going to go back to a technical piece. There's 5 business days before the CSE meeting. They must, the Committee on Special Education, CSE chairperson, will send you a notice that will give you the date, the time, the location, the purpose, and the names and titles of the attendees. And it's at this meeting that the committee will decide if the student, again, of which you are a member, if the student is eligible for an IEP, and they will decide one of the 13 classifications. So now I've been talking for a while, and we'd like to hear from you. I'm going to turn it to Pam.
Okay. At this time, we'd like you to answer another poll question. And what do you think about this? Should a student attend his or her CSE meeting? So yes, no, or perhaps you're not sure. And I will let the votes come in. Give people a little bit of time to think about that. I have a specific response back, a couple specific responses in addition to the poll questions. At transition age, Tammy says. Brett says depends on the individual student. I'm going to give it a little bit more time to see whether any more votes come in. It looks as though the votes have stopped coming in. So let me close and share those results. And we have, no one said no, which is good. About 2/3, 63%, said yes, the student should attend, and 38% said they weren't sure. Another specific response says it depends on their maturity and their age and maturity level. So thank you for those responses. And I believe, Kathy, are you going to continue at this point?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thanks.
I thank you too, and I know that April, it also does. we totally believe that a parent should do what a parent believes is right. Absolutely, bottom line. We do encourage and maybe even challenge you to consider bringing in your child, bringing in the student. We understand why you may believe it's inappropriate and could be a little intimidating, so maybe you just bring them in for a little while and have Aunt Susie come with you, and so that they can take them immediately out. And I have to tell you that I'll never forget the day in which I was sitting in a meeting, and fortunately the student was there, and we spent all this time brainstorming strategies and that, and then we looked at the student and we said, what do you think? And he looked at us and he said, I'll never do any of that. And it was one of those, yes! I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And so then we said, well, what would work? And he told us what would work, and it was very cool. April, you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, I would just definitely say, I just remember being a little girl, and I loved to listen to my mom's conversations with her friends. And she had this little code phrase, and she would say, okay, ladies, little eyes and little ears. And at the time, I didn't know what she was talking about. But it was basically just an informal way of letting her friends know that we need to now use language differently than we would if we were in private, because we have a little person in our presence. And as Kathy stated earlier, if a child only comes just for the beginning of a CSE meeting, that's fine. But even if they choose to stay, it really does help all of those members of the CSE. Just remember that there's always a way to say things, and we can convey what needs to get across without using terms that could affect the esteem of the student. So just always remember that.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, as we move off of discussing an IEP, and I turn this over to April to talk about 504 plans. I'm going to one last time look at the words on this page, because this is the middle piece of what we're talking about. And there's so much to tell you about this, but we're just doing a brief overview of RTI, IEP, and 504. So I have to contain myself here. But I see the words, the big word is child, and IEP, and education. I see modifications, success, all sorts of very, very cool words in here. This basically identifies the IEP, how the school resources need to be coordinated to support the student needs. It also provides accountability. That's a big piece. It ensures that there's a coordinated approach to address the student needs. It guides instruction, and it supports participation in the general education curriculum.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was amazing for such a short amount of time. But let's take a look at 504 as we prepare to wrap up. 504 plans ensure that children with disabilities have equal access, and the key word here is equal access, to an education similarly to students who do not have disabilities. And this slide I really love, because what it represents is fairness versus equity. In the very first slide, we see what happens when we do things according to fairness. Every child should receive the same thing. And as we see that, our friend on the end, he can't see over, but this is what happens. So it's just like saying that, okay, April, you can't wear glasses to work today because everybody else doesn't have glasses, because that wouldn't be fair. But then if you look at the other side of the slide, we see what happens when we view a student's needs according to equity. Equity simply means that every student receives what they need. And anyone standing on the other side of that fence, all they would see are the three glorious heads of some excited young people watching a game. No one would know that someone else had what they needed to be able to have equal access. It's the best way to describe what 504 plans are meant to do. Now we have another one. This one's pretty cute in our next slide. It says, for fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. This one gives me a chuckle every single time, because I did say the first time I saw it, I said, well, because everybody looks at the monkey, and we see that the monkey definitely would have the advantage here. But I said, well, what about the bird? And it's like, no, the bird would get a 0 because the bird would fly up to the top of the tree and not climb. With that being said, some children may have a disability that is not significant enough for them to receive special education. An option for this child may be to develop a Section 504 plan. Section 504 is a federal law that prohibits the discrimination against any person who has a disability. A Section 504 plan may list the changes needed in a child's education program for him or her to be successful. It's important to include the student, as Kathy mentioned with our last slide, because if appropriate, well, and of course when it's appropriate, because when discussing accommodations and modifications, we may suggest things that the child would not necessarily do. But a first step could be to ask the child what would be helpful in classes where he or she is experiencing difficulty. On our next slide, on September 28, 2008, the Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act was signed into law. And so when we talk about a 504 plan and how is a student determined to be eligible, in order for a student to be found eligible for a 504 plan, it must be demonstrated that the student's symptoms substantially limit a major life activity. Now when we talk about substantially, that word just simply means actually or truly. Is April nearsighted and does she need glasses? Yeah, she really does. But it does not determine the level of the strength of lens that I need, which so when you start talking about a student's symptoms and how they impact their lives, and remember it's a major life activity, substantially is so different than significantly. And when you start using the term significant, it takes on a different tone. It's like of utmost importance, or to the extreme. And unfortunately, this is what some schools are using as a definition to determine whether or not a student is found eligible. So major life activities, they're defined in the Section 504 regulations as functions of caring for yourself, performing manual tasks, walking, seeing. It could be hearing, speaking, breathing, learning, and working. This list is not exhaustive. And so back in 2008, Congress provided additional examples of major life activities. And this includes eating, sleeping, standing, lifting, bending, reading, concentrating, thinking, and communicating. So many students have symptoms that might interfere with reading and writing and concentrating, and maybe even it might interfere with their thinking or the way that they communicate. The student, even with all of those challenges, still might be able to maintain good grades. Too often students are denied a 504 plan because they are passing. They might be maintaining good grades or even making high grades. But remember the definition. Only one major life activity has to be, it's substantially limited. And remember, that's actually or truly, not significantly. Hope that wasn't too confusing, everybody. Let's take a look at accommodations and modifications that can be provided under Section 504. So let's unpack it. Extra time. I love this picture. A 504 can provide extra time for a student for tests. It could be for homework. It could even include long-term projects. Access to a computer can be also provided on a 504 plan, or maybe even a word processor for students who are impacted with handwriting challenges. I love this next slide because I had a student myself in my home who needed this particular accommodation. An extra set of textbooks to keep at home. And this would work wonderfully for a student with organizational challenges who often forget to bring needed materials at home. So under 504, extra set of textbooks can be provided. And look at this precious heart in our next slide. Sometimes a student just might need a few extra breaks during the day. And this one sometimes, gets a lot of flack. I think about myself when I sit at my desk. Oftentimes when I need a mental health break, I can get up, I can go to the restroom, I don't have to ask. I can get a drink of water if I need, or usually it's a cup of coffee, extra strong. Breaks during the day are tremendous helps for students. This one I really like as well. With the 504 plan, a student can have his or her locker situated close to homeroom. Again, this helps the student to remember that they need to go there and be able to transfer things as needed. Take a look at this one, copy of class notes. This can take the form of another student's notes. It could be something that's provided by the teacher. And for staff who feel that, wow, that's an unfair edge, what also works are notes that can be filled in. And again, it's about equal access. It's not about fairness, but it's about providing a student with what he or she needs. So we've got another question for you.
Okay, a bit of a check for understanding or a check of your existing knowledge. Can a student receive OT, PT, speech language therapy, a resource room services under a 504 plan? So we're going to ask you to answer that question, and then Kathy and April will comment on that. The votes are still coming in. I'm going to wait a little bit longer while people are responding. Looks as though nearly everyone has voted. I'm going to wait just a little bit more. Sometimes people are on a device that doesn't allow them to answer a polling question. So, okay, looks as though the votes have stopped coming in. Let me close that and share those results. So we have 40% of our audience who says yes, they can, 10% says no, and 50% says they're not sure. So April and Kathy, can you enlighten us a little bit on that?
All right, wow. I don't know. Kathy, what do you think?
I think it's a smart group, but I think this is a confusing question because I do believe that people see which 504 plan is one that provides accommodations and modifications. But what we don't know is it can provide special education services. So ding, 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 ding. Those who knew that the answer was yes, they can. It's not typically, right, April? Not typically.
Yes, not
usually,
typical. Yeah.
yes, usually a student that requires special education services qualifies for a 504 plan, or excuse me, qualifies for an IEP. But it can. They can. Maybe that student needs accommodations, but needs PT services or speech and language services or resource room.
Yes. Yeah. And along with that, counseling services are also available. But it's so important to remember that whatever the accommodation or modification that is being considered for a 504 plan or even for an IEP, it's always based on what the student needs.
Right, and I would also say go to the New York State regulations and look it up so that you can feel even a little bit better about it. And they will tell you, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I kind of like this picture. It's a little scary. We do not want your meetings to be like this, where people are thinking, oh my goodness, get me out of here. She's going on and on and on. She's kidnapped the meeting. Instead, this is where you want to get to. And
yes.
Actually, if the picture was if I had my druthers, the picture would be a whole circle of people, mom and dad, or parents or family members on each side, but then the circle would also include the teachers and therapists and committee members, because that's where you want to go. And we at the Advocacy Center think there's a way to get there. Listen to me. This is how you do it. Bring your A game. I mean big A game. And bringing your A game is your child with a disability. If you're not comfortable in doing that, then maybe pictures or a video or a recording. I recently worked with a family that Their student was terrified. So they asked her to tell the committee what she felt about her learning and how she struggled. And they had her write it. And then that was brought to the meeting and read by the parent. So bring your A game. And that's having the student in some way represented. Okay, now see, I'm a big sweets eater. Bring a treat of some kind, basically to say, I value your time. You are important. I mean, when people come into our home, we like to tell them they're important by providing them with food. Well, same thing here for the committee. Absolutely. If you bake, cool. If not, seriously, who can resist a bag of Oreos? Seriously, I can't. An Oreo's still good. An Oreo's an Oreo. So, bring something with you. It says, I value you. And then, lastly, reach out. You are part of the committee meeting. It does not matter how a meeting ends. I always make sure that I reach over and I shake everybody's hand. And we can do the same. If just to say thank you for your time, because time is the most valuable thing we have, right, April?
Exactly. And not only that, sometimes we do have to agree to disagree, but it doesn't mean that we don't still bring our good manners and our good home training with us wherever we go.
You betcha.
We really just want to say in conclusion, whether it's response to intervention, whether it's the Individualized Education Program, the IEP, if it's a 504 plan, just always remember, again, the needs of the student are always the focus. And when families and schools work together, students can succeed. So are there any questions?
Yes, ladies, we do have a general question. And then for those of you that have specific questions that are really particular to your own situation for your child, I put a note in the chat window with our phone number and our website, and we would encourage you to contact us so that we can really address your concerns more individually. Some of the more detailed situations really require a little bit more probing on our part to get the full picture before we can give a really good answer for you, and so a webinar isn't the best format for doing that. So I would encourage you to contact us individually so that we can address those individual concerns. But there is one sort of general question from Angela, and if an individual has cancer or another chronic illness, are they able to participate in the CSE process? And I don't know whether she's trying to distinguish between perhaps that would be covered under a 504, but would they also be eligible for the Committee on Special Education? I'm reading a little bit into her question there.
Well, first of all, if you're asking can they participate, it's just even participate, the answer would of course be yes. From the perspective, you can always call in to a CSE or a 504 meeting. I've had families that have had cancer. But you think, Pam, they may mean can a student get services?
I'm not sure. It could be either of those. Obviously, yes. So if it's a person who needs to participate, yes, by phone is one way. If it's a member of the committee who couldn't be there in person, but I sort of think that the question is, can a student who has cancer or a chronic illness get supports under CSE as opposed to under 504? I could have misinterpreted that. And if Angela, if you were still on, you can clarify by adding another, posting another question for us.
Yes, and I would add as well, and I love technology today, just the use of Skype. There's so many different things, but I would say that definitely that would be a conversation that you would have before the meeting, so that all of that can be set up. And as Kathy talked about earlier, whether it's video recordings, I know of students who have created PowerPoints just to talk about, what their unique strengths are, and PowerPoint, by doing that, shows that that's a definite strength and something that they're motivated to do. But at the same time, to talk about those things where they have challenges and difficulties. So whether, and yes, they can be provided for. I know of a student who had a child who had a chronic illness and often, was in the hospital, and tutoring services were able to be provided for that student while she took care of her daughter. And so, again, it's all about what a student needs And it's all about presenting those needs to the committee and looking at how do we as the adults support this student's progress and their success in the general education curriculum. And whether it's an IEP or a 504 plan, again, how do we do that? And it's just so much easier to say, oh, we can't do that. But I would say that, it's important to challenge and say, what would happen if we tried this?
Right.
And I think that you'll find that things that people never thought of before, they're more willing to think outside of the box sometimes.
Right. And it always comes down to need, and you need to show what the need is.
Okay, we had another. Oh,
go ahead.
Did you have more to add to that, or were you?
I didn't know if Angela asked any more.
No, I have not heard anything more back from Angela. But Tammy has a question. To qualify for an IEP, you need to the student would need specialized instruction. So can you give some examples of what specialized instruction looks like in a general education classroom?
Well, it could look in a lot of different ways. When in a special education classroom, if it's you're saying a special education classroom,
no, general education. What does that look like in a general ed classroom?
Yeah. It could be having a paraprofessional or the teacher or a special education teacher working with them to in some ways modify their work or make accommodations for their work. I mean, it can be extremely specific, and it is geared to their IEP, their learning style, their ability. They may be working on the same topic but at another level of that topic.
Right. It could also include consultant teacher or resource room services for that student, and also some things that could also take place in that gen ed classroom. It could be simple environmental things like the use of a higher desk or the ability to stand in the back of the classroom, or maybe the student needs to be positioned so that they're closer to the teacher. It could also include possibly an FM system so that they can hear better, use of a computer or word processor. So there, again, as Kathy stated, it all depends upon what the student needs. And again, that student has a right, and that's one thing that we didn't cover because this was an overview, but having that student participate in the least restrictive environment where they would participate if they did not have a disability. And so again, looking at the ways that we can provide those all of the services or supports that they need. Again, it's a conversation, and again, sometimes it may take a little bit of what would happen if we tried this, and then we come back to the table to take a look at how it's working.
Okay, we have one more question, and then if we have just another minute, I will navigate to our website and show you where you can find some more recorded webinar resources. If a 504 turns out not to be enough support, should the parent ask for a review or go ahead and ask for a CSE evaluation or reevaluation? And this question comes from Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Could be both.
Yes.
Because it is the pieces of the 504, are they actually being used? I mean, you always have to look at that first. Are they being used? Again, maybe further evaluation needs to occur. Maybe there might need taking a better look at it. So I would start with the 504 plan. I would start with the 504 plan. But I would, hopefully you are having a review on a regular basis, because the 504 doesn't necessarily include that. It's not like the IEP where you're reviewing as frequently. So you would want to set that up with the teachers and have very close communication so that you're not waiting too long, because we know the process takes a long time. So I would start with the 504. What about you, April?
I would definitely agree. Always start with the 504 team meeting first. Again, to find out from the student what has been in place, what is working and what is not.
Right.
Finding out also if teachers are implementing it, are they aware of the 504 plan? All of those things. But the best part about having that 504 plan, and all of those steps have been taken, and the family feels that we might need a little bit more support than a 504 can provide. The 504 and all of those accommodations and modifications serve as data to add to the possible upcoming CSE meeting. And again, looking at an IEP based on needs, this will provide so many things that we did try but did not work, and so now we need to take it to the next level. So again, I definitely always start with the meeting first. Again, because it could be just a simple thing as miscommunication, or we're trying things that the student has not officially bought into.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I would also say you could start the RTI process. I mean, you could take a look at that if you think it's learning based. It's kind of like it's an it depends question, and there's a lot more questions that need to be asked. Anytime anybody calls us, we ask a ton of questions, and the person is on the other end of the phone, and I'm Rach and April. We're asking a lot of questions, and once we get that answer, then we know where to go next.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to just go ahead and navigate to our website at this point in time. So let me bring that up. Okay, and let me show my screen. Okay, so are you folks, Kathy and April, are you seeing our website at this point in time?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Kathy and April have given us an overview, very brief overview of response to intervention, IEPs, and 504 plans. And I wanted to show you on our website where we have some more recorded webinars that give some more detail on those topics. So here's the home page on our website, which is, as you can see up here, www.advocacycenter.com. Go to the Newsletters and Resources tab, and then click on Resources. You'll see a fly-out list of resources. I'm actually going to click on the Resources button, or click on the word Resources, which takes us to this page, and then you will see recorded webinars by topic. So response to intervention, we have an entire webinar, an hour on that particular topic. We have an hour on IEP Essentials. Actually, that one might even be 2 hours, I'm not sure. So you can get more resources here on our website and look at recordings of those more detail on these topics that we've covered in just a brief overview style today. Let me also show you, I mentioned in the chat pane, if you have specific questions specific to your situation, to call us. Our phone number is here at the top. You can click on the contact button that takes you to a contact us page on our website, which you can fill out, submit, and then someone will follow up with you. So those are a couple of ways to get to us to get more. Let me scroll down. Here's the Contact Us page. Get some more specific information about your particular situation. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Kathy and April for sharing their expertise today on this topic, and remind you that you will get an email from GoToWebinar with a link to a SurveyMonkey, and we would again ask you to spend just a minute or two to fill that out so that we can get a sense for how we did today. So thanks again for joining us, and we have several other webinars coming up. You'll be getting, if you're on our email distribution list, you'll be getting notice of those in the near future. There's one coming up in December, one in January, and one in February, and we all know how that's nice that you don't have to go out in the bad weather, and you can stay at home or at your office and participate. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.